Thank you. Keith, would you take roll, please?
Sure. Larry Fox.
Here.
Jeff Newsom.
Here.
Joe Kalani.
Here.
Sue Grissom.
Here.
Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Tom Murphy.
Here.
All here.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Next up, item 4, approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Mitchell, second from Commissioner Voigt. Are there any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, approval of our December 2018 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Grissom, a second from Commissioner Murphy. Are there any changes?
Yeah, I have a couple, starting with item number 1. It states that the meeting was called to order by Commissioner Tom Murphy.
Yeah, right? Good catch.
That's a prelude to what's going to happen.
Capital letters.
On packet page 3, under the conditions for the motion, condition number 2 is stated twice in there. I don't think we need that. And then the third item I noticed was there's a couple of references to the length of a shared driveway, and it states it as 660 feet, and I believe that should be 600. And that's all I have.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, are those amendments okay with both? Okay, all those in favor of the meeting minutes as amended here this evening, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, a little housekeeping that we take care of the first meeting of the year, and this is it here on February 14th. The first item up is our reaffirming of our bylaws. Troy, you just want to give us a real quick?
Sure. This is the rules and procedure bylaws for the Planning Commission. Somewhat outlines, that you'll follow Robert's Rules procedure in your meetings, what kind of the role of the Planning Commission is, what kind of the role of the staff is, that the Planning Commission can establish subcommittees to assist on various topics, and that they'll hold their regular meetings and what it takes to have a quorum and how voting shall occur.
Okay, so are there any questions or any potential changes at all to these this year?
I have one.
Okay, where would that be?
Number 6.0 annual organizational meeting. It calls for the meeting to occur the first regular meeting of January. I think we should probably match the verbiage in the front part of that and say the first meeting of the year.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
So we would be looking for a motion now to reaffirm our bylaws.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kalani and a second from Commissioner Voigt. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, our election of officers. We have 3. We have our, we need a motion for this, correct? Is there anybody that would like to take over as chair?
No. Look at all the hands.
Okay, look at the hands going up. So we will need a motion, and
Can we do each one, or can we just move?
Troy, you said we could do it as one if we
You could do it as one, if you wanted to.
Move to elect or reaffirm the existing officers that we have.
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner.
Simple.
That is simple. Kalani and a second from Commissioner Murphy. Any other discussion? Any last opportunity that somebody would like to speak now? Or Mitchell. I'm sorry, Mitchell. This is the last chance. Come on, guys. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up is our committee appointments, which are in the bylaws. We have, currently we have one committee, our Ordinance Review Committee, which would be consisting of Commissioner Grissom, Voigt, and Murphy. I spoke with all three of them. They would be interested in retaining those positions this year. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to reappoint them to that.
Okay.
And then as just a little side discussion, we have one item that's been on our list for quite some time, the lake lot issue and all that. And Troy and I've been talking, and I think with the commission's, to let you know, I think what we're going to do is, I've asked Trustee Kalani if he would join me and Troy and Martha and try and get something together on that one. It's probably the biggest item on the list, and we can keep the Ordinance Review Committee working on all the things you're doing. Maybe we can get that one taken care of. So information purposes only, the four of us will try and get something together, obviously bring it forward as we bring all of our ordinance review or ordinance amendments. We'll talk about them and see where we can go with it. Work for you? Okay.
Great idea.
Good. Okay, we're up to item 7, call to the public. Anyone? No. All right, we're going to move on to item 8, which is our site plan application number 19-002. This is for a Panda Express restaurant. If anybody would like to come forward, you're welcome to. What we'll do is we'll have our planning director introduce the project, and we'll have you add anything you'd like to add, fill us in. Then we'll probably run through the staff review letter, and we can have a three-way conversation with all of us. So while they grab their seats, we'll, why don't you introduce it, Troy, and then we'll have them introduce themselves to us once we turn the floor over to them.
On the board so they can all see it.
Perfect. Sure, we can do that. Just,
Yeah, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's kind of heavy.
Break it.
Okay. Let me get started here. So the applicant is proposing a Panda Express. I guess let me start off by maybe explaining where it's located. This is an aerial map, if you will, of a portion of Hartland Township. This is US 23 going north and south. This is M59 here going east and west. And then this is Hartland Road going right here. Of course, Meyer is in this general location. The area that they're looking at is currently vacant, undeveloped. This is where Imagine Theater would be located. This would be Taco Bell. So the area they're looking at is right in this area here. And what I have is a site plan that shows how it would sit on the property. You would come in from the north. The building sits over in this area. There's a drive-through lane here, and then of course you've got the off-street parking and a connection to the Taco Bell site, and then a future connection to a future site to the west. This project, it's about a 2,300 square foot restaurant with drive-through window. This project requires site plan approval, which is the Planning Commission's jurisdiction. The addition of the drive-through window requires an amendment to the plan development. The plan development limits the number of drive-through businesses in this PD and specifically limits it to 2 restaurants with a drive-through window. So this would be the 3rd restaurant with a drive-through window. So they are seeking an amendment to that PD to add an additional drive-through business and then add a drive-through restaurant. So that requires a recommendation from the Planning Commission and ultimately an actual decision from the Township Board. That's generally the layout of the property. That's where it's located. and that's the process that it needs for approval. So if you've got further questions, I'll be here to help answer.
Perfect. Well, now we'll turn it over to you if you'd like to introduce yourselves, anything you'd like to add. When you're done, we'll go through the staff letter and talk.
Okay, sure. My name's Amy Conti. I'm with Nora Architects. So we're both the architects on the project.
My name is Dina McCowie. I'm from Nora Architects as well.
Okay.
Mike McPherson with Atwell, the civil engineering consultant.
Okay, great. Anything you would like to add to the project or the presentation at this point?
I don't know, there's a whole much to add to it. I mean, we obviously had elaborate discussions with staff and going back and forth trying to iron this project out, and we really appreciate their assistance with that. You know, the site plan, I think, complies with all the PD setbacks, parking, and all that good stuff. Obviously, as Troy mentioned, we're requesting a recommendation for approval of the PD amendment for the additional drive-through. I would think maybe the one thing that we want to maybe show and go through is the building elevation and some of the materials.
Yep.
I'm sure that's something that the board is interested in. I don't know, Amy, if you wanted to kind of just describe the materials for the building.
Sure. Yeah, the main material is actually brick. There's 3 different colors. So there's a gray base, which extends over a couple porticos, both at the building and at the drive-through as well. And then a beige and brown brick that match the pattern book requirements. And then the horizontal material that you see, it's a composite wood plank. So it's actually similar to Trex, like something you would typically build your roof or your deck out of, and they apply it vertically as a rain screen. So it's a very durable, nice product. Yeah, and then we just have glazing and aluminum canopies that extend about midway height of the building around the building.
Okay.
Yeah, so as an engineer, you know, to me, it's a very modern, attractive building. I'm not, you know, not Anthony has described it nicely. You know, as far as going through the details from a civil perspective, obviously this is a pre-planned outlot, so utilities and everything that's stuff at the site. It was mass graded before, so the post grading is very, very minimal change. The berm along Highland Road, that's already in place. Field landscaping is proposed to meet the PD and ordinance requirements. So, you know, based on that, we obviously are here and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Have you seen the staff letter, our staff letter?
Yes.
Okay, dated February 7th. So what we'll do is we'll take a run through that. That'll get us through all the points that we need to take a peek at. And I am going to start with that on packet page 17, which can be found down in the lower right-hand corner. Troy mentioned we have 2 things to do here tonight. One is make a review, and should we choose a recommendation to the board to add a drive-through to the PD, and then the Planning Commission is going to actually be approving the actual site plan itself. So flipping back onto, or the next page over to packet page 18 is where we'll start the site plan review. This is generally considered to be Outlot 8. Troy, you mentioned something about some moving of some boundary lines and land divisions here and later in the letter. That's something that's handled administratively?
Yes, land divisions are handled administratively through the planning director and the assessor. I think what this property almost, if I zoom in on this, this is the general area that they're looking at. However, this is part of a 20-some acre piece, so they'll have to split this off to become a separate parcel. And I don't think they're taking the whole thing. I think there'll be a small piece of this that they'll will be held on to by the current owner, and they can attach that to other lands, or it probably won't be able to sit on its own, but that generally is handled administratively just by staff.
Alrighty, and jumping over on 19, there is no traffic assessment, generation or impact assessment because that was all done for the development. You mentioned something about the land division and the road itself and making sure we take that into account at some point in the future.
Yep, I can, and I've talked with Ross Galantine, and he's here tonight on this issue. In a couple of areas, I've identified some concerns. This one is to the east of Panda. This would be where Culver's is. This would be Clark Road over here. And effectively, what we've got here is Rovey Road, almost as separated out from all of these properties to where it creates a concern, at least with the township staff, as to what happens with this piece if it's defaulted on and who's going to ensure that it's properly maintained and owned. And then the second one is actually over where Panda is. And you can see the way that these properties have been divided, and this Hartland Square Drive is almost separated out, and you can almost envision when this property is split off that a good chunk of Hartland Square Drive will exist. It'll still be connected to the parcel up here. So what I've suggested is that we need to find a way to resolve this to ensure that those roads will be adequately maintained in the future. I also don't want to hold up Panda Express with that issue. So I've put a condition as part of the amendment of the PD that prior to going forward with future projects, I think we can get that resolved to the satisfaction of the township attorney. So I just put some condition in the motion there.
Okay.
Does that help explain what that's all about?
You guys all right with that one?
Yep.
Okay, following along. Okay, I am on packet page 19 now. They're about a third of the way down, access and circulation. This, as I stated, it meets the PD and all the requirements, so we'll probably get through this rather quickly. Lot size, there are no issues here. Minimum PDs are 20, but given what the development is and how the PD works, there are no problems with lot size here. Frontage, there are no requirements on the frontage, so therefore it's not applicable. All our building setbacks are being met. And now I'm flipping to page 20, and all of our parking lot setbacks are met. Building height, we're under the maximum 35 feet. Our lot coverage, while we don't have any, they are under what our lot coverage is permitted in the GC district. There isn't anything specific in this PD, but they're at 65% approximately. So under site requirements, parking spaces, there are 23 required. We're proposing 42. We don't have a provision to tell them they can't have 42, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so as long as everything's in the setbacks, we're okay with 42 spaces. Everybody good with that? Okay, and our barrier-free parking, they're meeting the requirements. Moving over to the next page, packet page 21, the loading space. If you guys recall, in many of these sites, we do a loading space within the drive-through lane because it's typically done off hours. So they are following the trend in the area. Dumpster enclosure, Troy, just to touch on that for us.
So just to touch on that, the dumpster enclosure building materials mentioned something that, and I'm going from memory, to match the building, and I think it said EFS. So I'd reached out to the architect, Amy, and said, well, generally we don't accept EFS as a building material. And she said, well, we do intend to match the building, and that they would match it as brick. The plans just don't reflect that, and I did receive an email from Amy to that effect. It might be nice if they at least state on the record here tonight in front of all of you that that's truly their intent, and I don't see any issue with that if they do that.
Sounds good.
Yep.
You'll do some combination of your brick?
Yeah, it will be brick.
Okay. All right, thank you. Lighting, does not appear that we have any lighting issues either at the property line, the average illumination levels, the maximum illumination levels. Fixture height is okay. On packet page number 22, fixture type. This is one of those things that we just someday will address in the overall PD. If you guys recall.
I just wanted to make a comment. Do you recall in the original pattern book, does the individual outlets call for having the same light fixture?
Yeah, I think in the pattern book, it showed a light fixture. It's the old metal halide style.
I understand that we're replacing them for good reasons, but my question is that, you have Taco Bell here with their light fixtures. Now we have next door Panda Express with another set of light fixtures. Just so I wanted everybody aware of, unless we forced them to do something different, match Taco Bell, and try to maintain all the same light fixtures throughout the rest of the outlets, that we're going to get just kind of a hodgepodge and mix match light fixtures. And if that's okay, then that's okay. But I just want to bring that up.
Some of that is part of their, I mean, we're not trying to make all the buildings look the same.
No, but I mean, some of the parking lot light
illumination
fixtures.
or the actual.
Some of the parking lot light fixtures maybe on the outside.
The parking lot light fixtures.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
The light poles.
The poles and, the fixture themselves, yeah, out in the parking lots.
I don't see that it's an important matter to me. I accept what they're proposing.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with them. I just wanted everybody to be aware that it could be every development that comes out there is going to have a different light fixture. So,
Comments,
I
Tom?
mean, they look nice, they're fine, but.
You're right. Anything from Mike or Tom on that?
I guess I don't have any perspective one way or the other. I recognize what Keith is saying. I guess it doesn't bother me either way.
Yeah. Tom, any comment?
I guess unless it's something radically different that's unreasonable, but I can't imagine that's the case. I would think that when we look at the plan and approve it, we would have that option individually for anything going forward.
Sue, any thoughts?
I'm fine with it too.
A comment I would make would be that we already have 4 or 5 outlets. I'm not sure what they have. They must not, if they're deviating, they must not be deviating enough that it's standing out.
Anybody noticed, yeah.
Yeah, but it is a good point. Good point to note. Are you okay with the fixtures they've proposed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically what that amounted to is we're accepting this fixture. It doesn't comply with the pattern book, but the pattern book is an old type of light fixture that has since gone outdated. These are energy efficient. Someday we'll get that all taken care of in one of our future amendments. Landscaping.
Have the committee look at it.
We can have the committee look at it. We're on packet page 22. Landscaping. Are there, would you like me to go through them? Anything specific stand out? It looks like we're a lot of compliance other than maybe the thought on changing plant material and the use of rocks in the landscape beds. Any comments?
So I'm the landscape architect. He's looking at me. So. Here we go.
Yes, I am.
So just a couple comments. First off, you do have a transformer out there in the middle of that landscape area, and we do have a requirement that that should be screened. I didn't see a comment on that, but we try to have that in because it's like right behind your bike rack. It would be good if we could put some screening around it. And that's, if you guys know, it's like right there. I don't know if you can, kind of in the center of your lawn.
Yeah, no problem. We'll
Okay.
provide screening for it.
And then the comments, and we've looked at these plans for a little bit here about your desire to use the river stone over the mulch. And, in our community, we really discourage stone. We don't allow it. So I guess it's, if you want to discuss why you want to go to the stone, but right now we're really encouraging you to stay with the shredded bark mulch. Is there some specific reason why you've kind of been pushing back on that one?
Yes, and Amy can elaborate, but in my understanding, so the stone is a Panda's kind of prototype go-to for their mulch areas. They like to use the river stone in all their stores, just one for consistency, and two, they find it that it's very beneficial for maintenance purposes. Where they have the bark mulch, it tends to blow around and get messy, and they're constantly adding to it, sweeping it up, all that. Where the stone, they don't have that issue with. So that's the reason that we're proposing, or we're asking for a waiver on this item.
I can speak to why we don't use stone, and I don't ever remember the township doing it, and a lot of it boiled down to the hard surfaces. The parking lot, if you look at the site, I mean, most of it's parking lot. There isn't a lot of grass or green. And then curbing, sidewalks, and then you start putting stone out in landscape islands and around buildings, and it's just more of the same hard surface. So I think the plants, the lawn, the mulch, that was a lot of the reason that I don't believe we have stone in any site in the township right now. Maybe we do. But that is the logic that went into not utilizing rock in landscape beds.
Right. So with that, we really prefer, I don't know if you can go back to them and just tell them that's something, because, it heats up the parking lots. It's just really hard. We do have some requirements as far as the coverage in the islands. At least 50% should be shrubs. And then the balance, the way our ordinance reads, is it should be ground cover, perennials, annuals, and then mulch. In your pattern book, and then kind of that update, it talks at least 50%. And I did a little math on a couple of the islands, and I don't think you're quite at the 50%, which is really making things hard. So this island down here, you have a square footage for it. And when I looked at the number of shrubs you have and kind of said if each shrub was like a diameter of 4 feet or 16 square feet, this one's about a third of some shrubs. So I want you to please increase that, thinking like each shrub is about 16 square feet of coverage when it gets maybe like 5 years old, not, the installation size. As a recommendation, because I think you guys, I don't know who did the plans. I'm going to think maybe your office, Atwell Hicks, did this, the engineering firm.
Yep.
One comment, just as a kindness, is try to move your plants further into the middle of your islands, because when you get out of your car, step one, they'll step on them. Number two, just because of the salt, when you have the foliage right next to the edge, it just fries. It burns from the salt. So that'll help you fill out your islands better. It gets more in the center, away from salt and trampling. Okay, so once you scooch that, just as a comment. The other island that I thought was a little shy as well was over here. They need some shrubs or something. That's considered an end cap island. I think right now you have it as just lawn. So if you can just put some shrubs in there. Okay, the reason why we're doing that is we're kind of updating our ordinance as well, but this is a connection drive. So what we're trying to do is just get some shrubs on these islands, so when you're looking in, you don't see that big expanse of pavement.
Yep, not a problem.
Is that okay?
We'll add a few shrubs, yep.
Okay, so we talked about that. Here's a trade-off too. It's your call, because I looked at your last plan that was when Outlot 8 was last approved, and if you look at that, and I don't know, Troy, if you can even bring that one up.
So.
But it might be good just to visually see it, and then we'll go back to your plan. And I just want to trade off. I don't want you to have to spend more money, but I think we can get a better answer.
Well, it's not a landscape plan.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
I pulled up the landscape plan, but basically what you had, if we can't get that, or can you get it?
Well, you'll have to bear with me.
I think.
Did I include that with?
Yeah, it was in one of the attachments, because that's where I looked to see, kind of the last round of the approvals.
Yep. Hold on.
No, that was before. And then you had like your last plan that was like Outlot 8.
Yeah, that's this one, but it's not landscape, unfortunately.
Somehow I could get it, but. Okay, well, the point of this is, I think what could work better, and won't be more money, it will be less, but to try to kind of help soften some of this site. And this is your call if you want to do it. That's okay. That's all right.
Why don't you just go back to the site that they're proposing?
Yeah, we'll just look at that one. That's fine.
Perfect.
So like this whole edge here, you see how you have that whole row of shrubs, but you've got your tall building? You can trade off those shrubs. There's no requirement to have those shrubs there. But if you can just trade them off for a couple more trees, it's going to look a lot better because it's going to soften the view of just that hard building wall. That's just a suggestion. But I know like that last Outlot 8 plan, it was loaded with trees, always kind of in these divisions between, you know, the Taco Bell and that. That was one of the intents. They didn't use the verbiage of talking about it, but that was one of the things to kind of help, you know, break up the site. When you just have these low shrubs, it doesn't do a whole lot, okay? You don't really need these shrubs here either. Those are used. They're not going to like hanging out right there next to the curb. You could trade those out for maybe getting a tree in here, because again, everything is so low, and now you've got your panda building. Just a comment, it's going to live longer, it's going to be a better thing, it's easier to mow around. Just some comments on that. Let's see there. This guy here, I know you have a requirement with that and these two. He's really jammed in there. You have some options. It's your call if you want to do, but this radius there in that drive, no one can really drive like that. You could make that a bigger radius. That'll make room for him. Or if you want, just slide that guy over to here. So you've got that entranceway. It's just he's so jammed underneath your plants, he's not going to thrive. He's just going to be underneath the canopy. These are just some tips.
Probably be loading space there. Truck coming.
Okay, I think. Oh, and then last, right here, that foundation, we do have requirements for a foundation. You've got a ton of stone right there. These are grasses, that row, so they're not going to give you a lot. I'd like you to at least get more living material there because that is kind of a prominent edge there. But what you've got is stone with a row of very narrow grasses next to the building. That should get softened up slightly. We have kind of foundation planting requirements. So some things aren't mandatory, but there's suggestions where I'm trying just to kind of improve, but make maintenance easier and not ask you for more money. It's just kind of shifting things around. Some comments.
Okay, thank you.
Could I offer that if those changes were to come in a plan, that it could be reviewed by staff and potentially yourself, so that
Sure.
we could maybe in the motion just put amended as discussed here this evening on the landscaping?
Sure.
Would that work for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Are you good with that?
Yes.
So landscaping was quite a few pages. We're through page 23. I'm all the way over on to packet page number 24 on the architecture and the building materials. Really the only discussion items here are, do you like the look of the building? And then they have requested an architectural waiver for the use of the Fibron material, and are you comfortable with that? Yes?
I am. I thought it was nice.
So it's great.
I'm fine with that.
Nice.
Everybody
I
fine?
thought it looked really
Yeah.
Okay, so what you'd want to do in your motion is add that you're accepting the architectural waiver as it relates to the Fibron. Pedestrian access, looks like everything's fine there. Any other comments here? Troy, you mentioned all these. Are these just at the bottom of page 25 so that they don't get lost specifically, or?
Yeah, just, they did provide, I guess it's worth noting, they've provided some bike racks, which are not a requirement, and you'll see more pedestrian-oriented communities that even require that, so I thought it was worthwhile noting that they've went to the extra length of providing bike racks there.
Doesn't Tim Hortons have the same? Don't they
I-
have like that? I thought
It was a little bit
That was
before,
prior to his
so-
day. I don't recall if they do or not.
no.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that.
Right, thank you. So I think we're moving on over to packet page number 26. We're up to other agency reviews right now. Have you taken a look at the DPW, the engineer, and the fire marshal's review letters? Are you good with everything stated in there? Okay. Any questions or comments on those review letters?
I had a question about the fire marshal letter. You call for a ladder, access ladder to the roof? I didn't see it on the drawing, but I assume it's not a problem.
Yeah, no, we didn't have it initially on the drawing, so that came back as a comment, and we'll get that implemented into the construction
Okay.
document.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for him?
Just one. Under landscaping, there was a concern about the proposed tree species.
Yeah, you didn't bring that up. I assumed you were okay with it.
Talk so much. I'm fine with it. It's very tough. It's still going to provide a canopy shade, so.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Any other questions for him? Do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. As Troy had stated at the beginning of the meeting, we need 2 motions here. So the first motion you're looking for is the site plan approval? By the way, they're listed on the paper, and it doesn't matter to you.
It doesn't matter what order you want to
Okay.
take them in.
So we have a motion to approve the site plan, and we have a motion to recommend the modification to the PD for the additional drive-through. We can take those in any order, whoever would like to read them.
I'll take a shot at it here. Move to approve site plan application number 19-002, which is a request to amend the previously approved plans for Hartland Town Square plan development and construct an approximate 2,300 square foot Panda Express restaurant with 1 drive-through window, including approval of the architectural and lighting waivers request with the following condition. The applicant, number 1, the applicant shall adequately address all the outstanding items noted in the planning department's memorandum dated February 7th of 2019 on the construction plan set, subject to an administrative review by the planning staff prior to the issuance of a land use permit. Number 2, the applicant shall change the building materials of the dumpster enclosure to match the building elevations. The revised plans shall be submitted as part of the land use permit. Number 3, the applicant shall eliminate the proposed stone and landscape beds and replace it with either lawn mulch or another acceptable material. Again, the revised plans shall be submitted as part of the land use permit. Number 4, the applicant complies with any requirements of the Department of Public Works Director, the Township Engineering Consultant, and the Hartland Deerfield Fire Authority Fire Marshal. Number 5, the proposed building materials offered on the site plan are acceptable to the Planning Commission as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Mitchell, second from Commissioner Voigt, to approve site plan application number 19-002. Is there any further discussion on that? Sue, did that get what you needed to get in regards to the landscaping?
There was just a couple comments where I talked about like the coverage for the, you know, the shrubs. That one's required. Other things were just recommendations, but so I guess I'd like that added in about the shrub coverage where at least 50% of the islands. And then the south side of that building where it had all the stone on the foundation, just to have, again, living material in that. Those are requirements, and screening that transformer, all those things. I think that those were the,
Yeah, I wrote that down on the wrong page.
the
Okay.
other were just suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Everybody know what we're voting on? We're all good? Because do I have to repeat it? No? All right, so we have a motion to approve site plan application number 19-002 with the conditions as stated here this evening from Commissioner Mitchell, second from Commissioner Voigt. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations on that. And now we're looking for a recommendation for the amendment to the PD.
Recommend a motion for site plan application number 19-002 amendment to Hartland Town Square Plan Development Agreement and amendment to the pattern book.
Support.
A request.
Jump to that bottom paragraph, yeah. You're good.
Request to amend the previously approved plans for Hartland Town Square development to permit up to 3 drive-through restaurants in the Hartland Town Square plan development and a total of 8 drive-through businesses with the following conditions. The Planning Commission has determined the proposed amendments to permit an additional drive-through restaurant/business within the Hartland Town Square plan development would still be consistent with the original intent to limit the number of drive-through businesses within this development. 2, the Planning Commission has determined that the amendment will promote an additional restaurant development within the PD that is desirable and a good fit for the community and will add the overall appeal of the planned development. The Planning Commission has determined that the proposed amendment will permit a restaurant business that will help contribute to the needs and desires of the entire community. And with the following conditions, prior to any future development in the Hartland Town Square plan development, the developer shall establish adequate standards to ensure for the long-term maintenance and repair of Hartland Square Drive and Rovey Drive, subject to acceptance by the township attorney.
Support that.
Shoot, I already wrote Kalani down. You're good.
I read more than I needed to, huh?
No, you didn't. You were fine. You were fine. So we have a motion to recommend approval of site plan application number 19-002, the Seventh Amendment to the Hartland Town Square Plan Development Agreement and amendment to the pattern book from Commissioner Voigt, second from Commissioner Newsom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Hartland. All right, we'll move to item 9, call to the public. I didn't think so. So number 10, planners report. Troy, that would be you.
Yeah, I have a couple of items. I sent you an email to kind of outline them. Let me see if I can't find them here. So I talked to the admin committee a week or so ago, and one of the things they wanted to see on our list of ordinances that we are amending, and I've got a copy. This is the list that that the Ordinance Review Committee has here. They wanted to see a little more detail on what exactly this might, what the thoughts were on these amendments and what the game plan was and what exactly was it that we were looking at doing. And so I want to share, I kind of share that with you, and we can certainly talk about that and elaborate a little further on it. So I'll share that with you, that the admin committee was looking for a little more information from the Planning Commission on detailing kind of these ordinance amendments on what exactly they were looking at doing.
So why don't we just go through them one at a time, real quickly. Got your pencil, Troy?
Yep.
All righty. Well, outdoor storage display and commercial developments, I recall that came up when we had 2 applicants that wanted to stretch those screening walls across the front of the entire facility. So it was a evaluation with a consideration of what should be the maximum permitted amount of screening wall, outdoor storage display in front of stores. Does that sound familiar to everybody?
Yep. Certainly does.
Sign regulations enforcement, I believe that is something that came from the administration. That didn't come from us.
Okay.
Wasn't that true?
I got to be honest with you, I'm not sure where that came from. That was discussed almost my first
That came
year
out
at
of neutral content, all of that.
Yeah.
That's where that came from.
So.
Anybody jump in? Private road, shared driveway ordinance, section 5.23. I don't know why that's on there.
I thought Larry and I
thought that was done,
So
but
That was done too.
I did.
Yeah. Well, we had met with a couple of developers and talked with them to hear some of their concerns. Some of the stuff we were able to deal with more administratively to assist them, and some of those concerns came from the cost of having township engineer out and inspecting. So there was no formal decision to take it off or remove it, but what I've done at least is tried to find ways to internally work with developers and our engineers on making sure we get our engineers out there when we need to, but not having them out there when we didn't need them out there. And I can't tell you that at least as far as I can tell, the developers seem to be okay with that, but you almost need a project or two to go through to kind of see if they're okay with that. And we've got a couple of private roads going on right now, and I'm not hearing any negative comments, so.
well, and the two things on private roads where the road ordinance is written to allow flexibility from the actual standard itself, one is the maximum length of the 600 feet. If you recall that we do allow a review from like the fire marshal that allows us to extend roads longer than 600 feet based upon the road and these mountable curbs versus, if you recall, the Chestnut development originally had curbs where they were more vertical in nature. They went to the roll-off curb, and they were allowed to have a road longer than 600 feet because the fire marshal was comfortable with them getting trucks and vehicles if they had to ride up over. The other is that if the extension of a private road doesn't meet the actual engineering standards of the materials built, the ordinance allows for that road to be evaluated by an engineer to determine that it can hold the weight of a fire truck and or the traffic that was being proposed to be the change on the road. So our private road ordinance has two clauses in it that allow things to drift from what's actually written on the page. But if the page is wrong, then it should just be changed. Rarely has it come up, but there are clauses in there that allow professionals to evaluate the situation to determine whether it's right versus us.
I don't think those were the topics that we were getting.
No, but I think that if that's where the flexibility comes in, what we've got. Anything on that one? Anything else? No. 4 light industrial and architectural standards. You guys are ramping that
there
up.
on that one.
Yeah, that, in fact, we had possibly our last meeting on that just not too long ago. I've submitted out a draft to the Ordinance Review Committee and just kind of waiting for feedback from them and probably present that to the Planning Commission soon.
Okay. Number 5, single-family minimum house size requirements.
How's that on there?
I think I brought that one up once. I think I was just asking a question because our minimum size was larger than many other communities. I think one time we discussed it, but it doesn't have to be on the list. Right. But I had somebody who was building a home and was griping about it, so he, says, hey, make sure you note it. And then I did some homework, and it was like our size was, larger, and it was just a question. So we don't have to have it on here.
You want that?
We don't have to. I just had brought it up in our own group for a discussion, and we really didn't go further than that. So, unless you guys feel that, but that was just, again, somebody was building a home and said, why, in this community is it so large when, in other communities it's not.
Well, maybe it should be on the list, and maybe the Ordinance Review Committee should look at it and compare to other communities and compare to determine whether it is or isn't appropriate. Maybe it should stay on the list. Yeah. Maybe it's kind of like the architectural standards. There really isn't much of a change to them. It was just to evaluate
if we're in line,
whether it was really what you wanted. So maybe it should stay.
Okay. I mean, it's your guys' call. I just kind of felt obligated to bring it up once, and I see it got on the list. Okay, so we'll keep it on and just maybe do a quick study to see what other requirements.
Well, I would look at neighboring communities or similar communities across the state even and add them into the mix and just look.
Yeah.
If we've got.
Yeah, I think that study sounds reasonable. It doesn't seem that.
All righty, and then we'll know.
Then you'll know whether you have something to come
Yeah.
back and say we have an issue
I
or we
will.
don't.
If
I
not,
will.
yeah.
Rarely does that come up, so
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
familiar
just
with
like
it.
I said.
What was the size that he was looking?
I don't,
Suggested.
it's been a while, but I can't remember. He built it to the minimum. He had to, and he was like,
Right.
why? And so I had a friend who grew up like in Dearborn, and their house, was like
Right, 900.
900 and something, and here
900
it might
square
be
feet, yeah.
1,500 or, whatever. And then we,
1,200.
1,200 is sounding familiar.
so that was like, when, and I don't know. I think,
Yeah, I'm just curious that what other communities, surrounding communities have.
Yeah.
But it might be only limited to like where they might have some village.
like
Settlement
a little
area.
village
Yeah, if
area.
you, in your village area where those lots would tend to be much
Sure.
smaller
Could-
than, than you would have conventionally what we have out
Yeah,
today.
right.
Which are usually, in a subdivision, they're, well, Mill Point's like 120 by 80, I think, or 80 by 120.
60.
60? Yeah, that's right. 60 by 100,
120.
right?
60 by 120.
120.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and most of those houses were all over, well over 1,500 square feet. And that's the most, probably of all the neighborhoods, the most condensed before you
Sure.
get to
Yep.
manufactured housing.
Yep.
So, I don't know if I'd go any smaller.
Yeah, maybe we'll just do a study, kind of see what everybody else is, just make sure we're in line.
Bring it back on a chart and
What
we'll
about
have a
the village?
discussion.
The village, that's where I was thinking, if I was going to limit, or have a smaller sizes. I know there's like some builders out there right now that are looking, they're kind of catering to some of the millennials who, they just want, this 900 square feet, they want a big house to take care of. And there's some, like, these mini houses, there's a builder
Yeah.
in Lansing that's doing this, like,
Yeah,
almost
the
like
tiny homes.
little tiny
Yeah.
houses.
Think about any of those.
Yeah, and I don't think that was what they were driving at. They were just
Okay, I think we got
next.
Okay, 6 lake lots, boy, that's just a big one in itself. It's, it's building them, it's being able to put garages on parcels, it's parcels with roads running between them, it's everything that
Accessory
comes up with
building.
lake lots.
Yeah.
It's all of it.
Is that what we're going to be addressing in that whole thing?
That's what it is. It's all of that. I didn't give you what it was
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
asked you to be on it.
It was this cryptic text I got. You said something about lake party, lots of parties.
You want to join us?
I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, whatever. Do anything else.
Yeah, no, that's what that is. That's why I said it's probably the biggest one on the list from complications. 7 accessory buildings. Troy, I think I know what that is. What do you, anybody?
In a way, the accessory buildings and lot coverage almost blend in with lake lots, but lot coverage may be a little separate. The accessory buildings that we run into especially on lakes, is when somebody owns land across the street from their lake house, that other non-conforming accessory buildings exist there, but today's standards don't permit that. So I can't issue him or her a land use permit for an accessory structure, even though several of their neighbors have existing non-conforming accessory structures. So
Wasn't some of that, though, commercial, too?
No, I think it's all residential. Maybe if your memory is some commercial.
Well, because we did address some accessory buildings on commercial. Stone Pro, for one, right?
Yeah. I think this is all residential.
Okay.
And I think this also is the ability to have a lot without a primary residence and have an accessory structure on it.
yeah.
That's what's in that one.
The other aspect of this is I do get requests to construct, somebody wants to build a new house and I'll call it a pole barn, but they'd like to construct the pole barn first so that they can then store their construction equipment and materials in the pole barn while they're constructing the house. And unfortunately, the ordinance doesn't allow the accessory structure to be there first. I've worked with them requiring an escrow account to cover the cost of tear down and removal of the accessory structure in the event they never start construction of the house. The way zoning works is there's all sorts of tools for tearing structures down that don't comply. There's literally no tools to force somebody to construct something. So if somebody elected not to build the house, I would be forced to require them to remove their accessory structure. Part of that is to, instead of me just kind of doing that, we could build what I've done, put it in an ordinance, and make it much more clear to people. Or if you don't want to do it, that'd be a perfect time to say, no, we don't want to do that stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's that topic, and that's gets discussed and figured out.
I was going to say, we might take a peek at Milford Township's ordinance. When I was on that board, they do allow in Milford Township you to erect a garage or an accessory building prior to the residential home. And then I can't really remember all of the details of it, but I know one of the requirements is that the person has to hold a building permit for the home at the same time they're going to start the accessory building. Now, what they may have done since that time, if they've added other requirements or maybe they've removed it, I don't know, but it did exist at one time in Milford Township.
Okay. We'll take a look at that one. 8 lot coverage. That.
So lot coverage is just one of those that I've stumbled into. It's we've got numerous lots, including on the lake and not on the lake, that exceeded existing lots that exceed the permitted lot coverage. We've remedied that already in a few cases. Some of the subdivisions were PDs, and so we were able to isolate just that specific development and identify that we could increase the lot coverage. Increasing it in the zoning ordinance is a little more tricky. It encompasses all lands in that zoning district, so you need to be more thorough in your review, but that's essentially.
So that's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to understand under lot coverage whether Hartland Township is consistent with our neighboring townships. We seem to have stumbled across this numerous times here, and so the first question that comes to mind is, when we say it's 35%, are we being too restrictive? You know, do other communities agree with us that it's 35%? And I'm just picking a number here at random. Or basically, you know, are we in line with the neighboring communities?
That's a good question, but it's a tricky one to answer because every community has a slight nuance to that. What's counted in lot coverage in one community, even though the percentage, they both might say 35%, but one community they don't count the driveway, another community they might. So that can change things drastically, even though on paper it might read the same. And it's that's a very good question, but it's a difficult one to answer.
But it's also, in my opinion, unfair if a person owns a home in a PD and they decide, that community decides to allow additional coverage in their community, whereas an individual who owns, let's say, a half-acre parcel standalone, he doesn't have anything to turn to that says, well, you know, allow me to go to 37%. I would certainly like to add a bigger patio, but I can't because of lot coverage
Well,
requirements.
in the case
So we
of,
allow it on one side, but we don't necessarily have any avenue to allow it on.
Well, and I agree. I think that's part of the ordinance review committee you would review all that. It wouldn't mean we're changing the ordinance. It's doing the research to see whether we need to change the ordinance. And then if we need to change the ordinance, what do we need to change it to? Because I think you're absolutely correct. It's surprising how many times lot coverage has come up.
It really does.
It's probably top 5 around here.
Well, and in today's world, a lot of the existing homes, people want, like 3-car garages, Previously, when they were built, a 2-car garage was more than adequate, Holy smokes, some of these developments are going to 4-car garages, So I just want to make sure that we're staying in line here. And I agree with Larry. It doesn't mean that we have to change it, but I'd just like to understand, are we...
Well, we may decide that there's a different way of looking at it after you research what other communities are doing and you look at those communities and you like the feel of what that percentage is doing or not doing.
yeah, you could impact that by just changing the definition of what's counted in lot coverage.
Take the driveway
and not
off.
even change the percentage.
Sure.
And that could make a drastic change.
And just like you pointed out, if other communities are not including the driveway, maybe that's something we need to look at. And you'd say, you've got to have the driveway, so why is it being used against me?
Just to comment on your comment on why in the PDs that we looked at did we amend it, but not other subdivisions that aren't in a PD. Those PDs had 40% of the total area of that development as dedicated open space. So those lots could have been considerably larger had they decided to extend the lots larger, but by dedicating land as open space in that PD, where it was 40 to 45% of the total land was dedicated as open space, the thought was that those, even though the lots were smaller, there was adequate open space within that development. That isn't the case in other subdivisions.
Well, if you were a resident, a homeowner, and you approached your township hall and that was a response, do you think you'd be happy with it?
No, I was just going to say the same thing, Keith. I was good. As a personal homeowner,
no,
nice words, but
yeah,
it doesn't fix my problem.
Yeah, right. So that, to me, is how I think you got to do the research to decide whether you want to change any language to begin with. Because I don't know if we know enough about what others are doing. So that's the list there, Troy. What was your next?
So
did you
next,
need anything else from us on that, or what?
No. The next one is a topic that's is kind of new coming up. The wireless industry is updating, it's upgrading to 5G. I don't profess to be an expert on what that actually means. Let me see if I can't find, here is in part of the email, I sent you some pictures of 5G. To keep it simple, it involves these antennae, but they don't have to be placed on 100-foot poles anymore. They can be placed on utility poles or buildings. And this is just some images of what that might look like. Here you'll find a utility pole with some antenna on it. Here's another utility pole with an antenna on it. And sometimes there can be quite a few antennas on buildings and so forth. So the question is this something that the Planning Commission wants to address, look into, adopt an ordinance to, I think the admin committee was thinking, boy, it's probably not a big deal if you got one antenna on here, but it's almost the opposite of how it used to be, where you encourage them to co-locate. Now as they co-locate, it becomes clustered almost. So I've just been asked to kind of throw that at you at the Planning Commission, get your thoughts on this, and if this is something you're interested in spending time on.
So local municipalities are going to be allowed to regulate this?
Yeah, I thought the
That would be
state
my
took that
first
away.
question.
There's, I think there, you know, if it's in the right-of-way, maybe their ability to regulate it might be lessened, but if it's not in the right-of-way and it's on private buildings or on private property in some fashion, I think you still have some authority.
Just first blush, just a comment, if it's in a right-of-way and we don't have, which is probably where most of it is, then we don't. I look at that thing on the top there and go, that's really no different than a rooftop apparatus on a building that has to have a parapet wall. So that's how I would fix that, but that's my personal
Yeah, I
opinion.
don't think they'd work.
That's
We
where
don't-
that's where I was going with
I
the
mean,
screening that we would.
Yeah, we require screening on buildings of utilities. I would require screening on that. The same. Then we don't have to change the ordinance, just make sure that's included in there. And if it's on a utility pole in a public right-of-way and we don't have control over it, I guess we're going to get what they deliver.
So what if they affix them on light poles in the parking lot or something like that?
Oh. Well, these are good thoughts. That's why you're...
Why the committee needs to sit down? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's something we should address. Yeah.
Yeah. On private, I guess, find out what we really can regulate, and then I think the Ordinance Review Committee needs to take a look at it.
Okay. See, just wanted to update you, the Ordinance Review Committee, I've already talked about this. We did kind of go through the light industrial and industrial standards. The Ordinance Review Committee ultimately did not change any building percentages or building materials. What their primary concern was the buildings, the large buildings that have long expanses of a solid monotone wall, they wanted to see some kind of a break in that. And we were just in the process of I've got a draft out to them. So that's something that'll probably be coming to the Planning Commission fairly soon, just their proposed language. Maybe if you've got some thoughts, questions, I'd be more than happy to help try and answer those. Otherwise, we can discuss it later when that topic is discussed. Moving on, just to let you know, we did a retail market analysis. Gibbs Planning Group did that. It is done. That's been distributed to you. April 11th is the date that we've tentatively set, and maybe tentative isn't the word. That is the date that they will come out to the Planning Commission and give their presentation. So if you've got questions or thoughts on that, either let me know or be prepared on April 11th to sit and listen to his presentation, and we can kind of move forward from there.
Could you get an idea of what we're thinking time-wise? Because it might be nice to not have any other applicants on that evening unless we have something that has to be dealt with.
I can talk.
Because I'm just wondering if this rolls into could be a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of presentation he's planning? Is this we're going to talk about it, or he's just going to flip the pages and say, this is what I'm telling you?
I think he could cater this presentation to however you want. If you want to go through it word by word, I'm sure he'd be willing to do that. If you just want to hit what the primary end results of that are, I think he could hit that. It's hard for me to say, are we going to have any other applicants?
I understand.
At this point, but I'll ask him and talk with him and get a better understanding of what he's thinking for that presentation.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for you on that right now.
That's fine. Get it from him, and then we can talk about what the rest of the meeting might look like.
Maybe as a summary already, it might make it, shrink it down for us.
Yeah, there was an executive summary in that. I mean, if you want, I'm sure if I said, can you just hit the executive summary, he would do that. So I'll just ask what his thoughts are. That's all I've got.
Anybody else? Anything? If not, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support?
We have Commissioner Newsom and Commissioner Murphy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.